Hi, this is Tanushree Chaudhary. Today I have brought another topic which is a bit complex, but I'll try to explain it to the best of my ability. It is about culture and religion and how it affects on our personality, right? Now, what is culture? Culture is basically a way of life, right? The way we live our life. In every country we have different culture. So culture is formed by, you can say, boundaries of countries and the people therein and the kind of practices they have in their routine life. That forms their culture. It also includes their occupation, their religion, faith as well. Okay. But if you talk about the primitive time, in the primitive era, primitive ages, people believed, means culture was religion and religion was culture. So basically whatever they practiced, the traditions and custom by following their religion, that was their culture. So culture had a very narrow view. Okay. Now later on, definitely man's creativity increased. So whatever was taught in the religion, the rules, the religious doctrine, man's mind moved beyond those religious doctrine, religious views. So if religion became just one aspect of culture, when culture grew larger in the other aspects, in the other fields. So other verticals also were created. For example, art, literature, music, these are also other aspects of culture. Now art, when art means basically we understand painting, sculptures, all these were initially these were the tools in the hands of the religious institutions to propagate their thoughts, their religious beliefs, their religious faiths throughout history. That was the main purpose of art, painting. Christian paintings became very popular on the walls of the cathedrals and the churches to pass on a certain message. Literature were also, doing the same, serving the same purpose of making religious scripts, making writing dramas about the gods and goddesses, and how the good people are blessed and bad are also punished, always punished. Okay. So this was the initial literature. Music was also in the same, following the same path. So that was in the primitive time. Later on, obviously, it evolved after the religious propaganda. Painting, sculptures, literature became the tool in the hands of the monarchies, and they propagated their chivalrous stories, acts, like we can see Napoleon in this picture. Napoleon originally rode on a mule, but when he was painted on a white horse to make him more glamorous and chivalrous. Napoleon is, riding on a white horse after getting his victory on the opponent. So these are the, this was the primary purpose of creating art and literature. But obviously later on, throughout the ages, it changed through the Renaissance, and then later on also it changed. And what we have today is modern art, modern literature, which has grew to leaps and bounds, and now challenging the very base from for which it was actually created. So culture has moved beyond religion, right? So in this way, in 1543, Nicholas Copernicus, Nicholas Copernicus was a Renaissance mathematician and astronomer who formulated a model of the universe that places the sun rather than the earth at the center of the universe. He first introduced this scientific, he was a mathematician and astronomer. He came out with his work, he put forward his work in which he stated that sun is in the middle of the universe and all the other planets including earth is moving around it, whereas at that time people believed that earth was static, earth was in the middle, and all sun and moon, these are rotating around us. But this very work was banned by the Christian churches. And because the way religion worked in those days, it was to they kept the power in their hand. They had the power in their hand as long as they made people believe that there is an someone called God, and he is responsible for all these systems and this universe going round, and for all the good and evil deeds, he is the supreme power, right? So the advancement of science really created the problem in their path when you actually challenge their mindset, their thought, their religious doctrine. So they were afraid of losing their power on the people. Similar work was, this very Copernicus work was supported by much later by Galileo. Galileo was an Italian astronomer, physicist, and engineer. He is considered the father of modern physics. He also supported the same view, and for that he was put to house arrest. So if we move through, if we delve into history, we will find many such instances when scientific work was absolutely prohibited, which could affect the religious thought of the people, because church was very afraid to lose their power on the people. So later on, so culture was getting evolved outside these churches, outside these religious institutions, and later on definitely this is how man's psychology was also getting shaped, right? So religion was static, but culture was evolving, dynamic, right? Now culture is constantly changing, and it has moved beyond the religious practices, and there came a time when it started challenging the typical religious beliefs and faith system. Now men, even today, we are all following some kind of religion in every country, and even within the country like India, we have so many religions, and we are following. Very few are of very few of us are atheist in that sense. So what we are being taught in our religious books, or in practices that we do, the traditions that we follow, we really don't accept it from the heart, because my culture is changing constantly, and culture all over the world changed this way. Like earlier, this 100 years war that happened between French and the British, cultural assimilations happened through wars. These 100 years wars happened because most of these French kings earlier used to get married to their British princes. Now when their children were born, they had the legal right on the land, and it was the land encroachment like this on which these wars were fought. Okay, so cultural assimilation was happening throughout the world, British colonies throughout the world. So in so many countries, they changed when they invaded these countries and had a huge effect over their culture. So when we are practicing our religion and we are living in a culture, this culture and religion is now at almost war. Now there is a very interesting theory in psychology, which obviously developed much later, It was done by Sigmund Freud, the father of psychology is called, and it is the pleasure theory, pleasure and pain theory. On the similar line, one test was done in 1935, and they coined the test as approach and avoidance theory. It was done on rats. It was seen that man's, even animals, natural instinct is to go for the pleasurable things and avoid the painful things. That is man's natural instinct. Now here comes the twist. Every religion, whether it is Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Christianity or Islam, we are taught of ultimately reaching to our salvation or nirvana or good karmic deeds through sacrifice. Sacrifice means what? Pain. So almost all the religions are teaching the same philosophies. The philosophy is to reach, your ultimate goal of life, the highest goal of life, that is nirvana, through sacrifices. That means facing pain and avoid all the pleasurable things. But what is man's natural instinct? As per psychology, pleasurable things. The man gets tempted towards pleasurable things and avoid all the painful things. But religious teaching is telling you exactly the opposite thing. So there comes a time when within our heart, this pleasure and avoidance, culturally, we are now almost tempted to take on the path of pleasure, whereas religiously we are taught to avoid all those pleasures. So the mind and heart is always at war. So today you will find people talk about superficial personalities and even, hypocrisy. We are living in that because we cannot, and it is not only in my country, it is happening all over the world. The biggest religions like Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, all the countries which follow these religions, they have the similar pattern, similar thought and belief system. But culture in every country, and even in today's world, it is even more true when we are, this technological revolution has made this world a global village. So cultural barriers are getting removed because of frequent interaction through internet, frequent interaction because of global trade and other things. Culturally, we are becoming very much similar, becoming one globally. But so obviously, when we talk about this individualistic culture and collective culture, in individualistic culture, every person takes care of their own needs, and this way they benefit the whole society. They are psychologically very distant from one another, and this kind of cultures are seen in the Western world. In the collective society, needs of the society is of utmost importance, and they all work in a group. The harmony and interdependent relationship of the group is of utmost importance. Psychologically, each group member is very close to each other, and this kind of cultures we get to see in the eastern regions. So individualistic culture, all those countries which are practicing individualistic culture are getting affected by the collective cultures, and all the countries which are having collective cultures are now being influenced by the individualistic culture. So cultural exploration is at its peak, whereas religious teachings are still standing at the same place. And we are all becoming a bit of a confused personality as which way to go psychologically, taking the way of pleasure and instant gratification, or avoiding all the evils to take the path of nirvana. It is for you to decide which way to go. My idea to create this video was not to put pass on a judgment. It was just to explore why we are so confused nowadays. I mean, hope you liked what I presented, and please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.